You guys might remember that the Onyx RCR was released back in 2018, and it had a really big impact on the whole e-bike market. At the time, it was one of the most powerful bikes, 72-volt battery, direct drive hub motor, a super fast top speed of 60 miles per hour, and it still had functioning pedals. However, the bike was certainly not perfect, and the company Onyx did eventually go bankrupt. But the reason why we are talking about them today is because they're trying to make a comeback, and they just launched a batch of 100 units of their classic RCR. So let's use this opportunity to revisit the company, the product, and see if it can really succeed in 2025.
How does it feel?
I haven't sat on her yet.
Oh.
It's too precious.
Now, when it comes to the RCR, my buddy actually owns this bike, so I'm pretty familiar with it, and it is a very unique and capable bike. Easily one of the best features of this bike is the high voltage 72-volt battery. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of high voltage, and this bike back in 2018 was one of the first to deliver this. However, the bike never had fantastic range.
So you died coming up the hill?
Dude, the thing just turned off as I was coming off uphill. I don't know how I'm gonna get home.
Well, we got more downhill. I mean, you're just coasting the whole time, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there's no way for me to get in, and this thing is hard to push.
I mean, you got pedals, but...
Bro, my legs are on fire. You have no idea how hard that shit was.
The original model, the version that my friend has, is only 23 amp hours. But today, even though this new batch of bikes looks essentially identical to the original, one of the changes is the battery capacity. They bumped it up to 45 amp hours at the same completely acceptable 72 volts. Now, the bike is very expensive, $4,300. So ideally, I would have liked to see a 50, maybe even 60 amp hour battery. Unfortunately, we don't have that here, but 45 amp hours is an upgrade over the original model. Another key update about this bike that's not immediately obvious is the power. This has a maximum rated power of 15.2 kilowatts with a nominal sustainable power of 7.2 kilowatts. And that makes this a pretty solid upgrade over the original, which I believe was nominal 3,000 and a peak of 6 kilowatts. However, in 2025, again, the market has changed, and we now have bikes like the E-Ride Pro 3.0 and other very capable machines. And they push a similar amount of power, if not even more. But the Onyx has never been an e-moto because they chose to go with a hub motor versus a mid-drive configuration. Now, this has its own sets of pros and cons. A huge pro is the maintenance is essentially nothing with a motor like this. You also don't have to worry about the chain breaking, falling off, but the trade-off here is the performance. The e-motos with their mid-drive and their gearing advantage are going to have better acceleration and generally enhanced handling. But I gotta say, I think this was a good decision by Onyx. There's already a ton of e-motos on the market, and something like the Onyx is more rare. And considering it's still pushing 15 kilowatts, 72 volts, the performance here is still pretty good. Also, keep in mind having a hub motor allows for the pedals, which is a key selling point of the Onyx. And it's the whole reason why my friend ended up buying this over an e-moto. Now, technically, this is not a street legal e-bike, even though it has pedals, because the power, the top speed's all way too high. But in theory, if you ride slowly, you pedal, you follow speed limits, it's probably going to be easier to get away with something like the Onyx versus an e-moto. And then finally, that brings us to the design. And here, the Onyx was always very unique, opting to go with a retro, old school look. Now, this is a personal preference. Personally, I prefer the look of more modern, futuristic e-bikes such as my Mantis X, but this retro look will definitely appeal to some people. But having ridden the Onyx, there is one objective thing I can say about this design, and that's that the riding ergonomics, the seat, are really not that comfortable. Even the geometry of the rear suspension on the Onyx is just not as good as something like an e-moto. So all in all, the Onyx RCR in 2025 is still a uniquely positioned bike. It is expensive at over $4,000, meaning that it competes directly with e-motos such as the Suron, E-Ride, Teleria, and the spec sheet with 15 kilowatts of power, 72 volt, 45 amp hour battery, it can just barely hold its own against those bikes in terms of raw power. However, those bikes have the advantage in terms of the riding ergonomics, the comfort, and the raw performance. But the Onyx, thanks to its retro design, functioning pedals, and low maintenance drivetrain, I think does carve out its own specific niche of people that would still be interested in this over an e-moto. But definitely let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and I hope you guys enjoyed.